Welcome to CCI Drive Time, the podcast for vended laundry distributors. I'm Steve with CCI, using your drive time to cover laundromat trends, payment systems, and practical topics you can use in the field. Today, we're going to talk a bit about an objection that comes up with laundry owners when it comes to technology in general. Sometimes it's not always about payment systems, but I think we see it more than other technology products on the market, which is what happens if my Wi-Fi goes down. This is a concern. Everyone believes that Wi-Fi is the linchpin of the system, and they're concerned that they're going to have mass chaos if they lose Wi-Fi. It's a common objection that we hear, but I think before we dig into it, we really need to make sure that we're all on the same page of what exactly does down mean, and we need to go through some of the various scenarios of what that is so that you can properly talk to the objection. And in this case, I think the objection is less about being an objection and really more about not understanding how things work and really being clear on how things are designed to work through these different scenarios. So let's start a little bit with what does down actually mean. Having a sizable tech support team, I can tell you we get people tell us all the time, the system is down, and that really has different meanings depending on who's calling, what the product is, and the term down is just way too general. It's just kind of a generic term for something is not working correctly. So I think for the purpose of this conversation today, let's talk a little bit about what down could mean. In one example, it might mean that the Wi-Fi is down, and it could also mean that the internet is down. And I've talked about this before in some of my morning drive time conversations about that there is a big difference between a Wi-Fi failure and an internet outage. People kind of generically use the term Wi-Fi as internet connectivity. But in truth, Wi-Fi is just the wireless link between your modem or your router that you have in your home or business to your wireless device. So whether that be your smartphone, your laptop, whatever device that is wirelessly connecting to the internet, the Wi-Fi itself is really not the internet. That's the technology that is used to deliver an internet connection to the device. So when we say Wi-Fi is down, oftentimes what they really mean is the internet is down. And those are really different things that have different responses that I think as distributors of products like this, you need to have a clear understanding of what those differences are. So the internet connection is typically provided by your ISP, your internet service provider. So you might have a Comcast or a Verizon, AT&T, all these different providers out in the market that provide internet connectivity, typically by a hard line to the building. And then inside the building, there's going to be like a router or some type of internet appliance that may deliver a Wi-Fi connection. So once the internet is to that appliance has an antenna or maybe multiple antennas that then delivers a wireless signal that all of your devices can connect to. So it's important that we understand the difference between those two things. An internet outage sometimes can be relatively common. If any of us have internet services at our homes, we know that we lose internet connectivity occasionally, and that is always a disruption to our day, considering we pretty much use it for everything now. But it is a realistic event that can occur, and in that it's important to realize that the Wi-Fi may still work. You may still see the little icon on your phone and the laptop that the wireless is connected, but the internet to the building is out. So when we talk about down, we want to make sure as we continue this conversation that we understand that Wi-Fi and internet are two different things. I think the third thing that people say often, and this one's a little easier to combat, is what if I lose power? Obviously, customers, we all know that all these electronics require power to operate, but they're often a little too soon to realize that so does all the laundry equipment requires power. So it really doesn't matter if you lose power to your building, your laundry equipment won't start, even if though your card system won't operate either. And that one's easy because all of these systems are designed to auto start back up after power loss. Some of the solutions have battery backup, so they may even remain powered even after your laundry equipment has gone offline due to power. But the key is that the products on the market are all designed to basically recover from a power loss. That's fairly easy to do. So those are really the three different scenarios: a Wi-Fi failure, internet outage, and potentially a power outage. All of those things are what I would consider as being quote unquote down. So we also need to make sure we realize that depending on the type of system that we are dealing with, the way it handles down, again, may be a little bit different. So some payment systems rely heavily on the cloud. So for us, we have a Flex RF system, our fast card system, are cloud-based solutions. And so they have a certain reliance on the internet for certain things. We'll go into some of those details here in a moment. But then there's also on-premise type solutions, which basically almost everything you need to do to operate that system lives in the store, doesn't live on the internet, lives in the store. And so our laundry card product would be a good example of an on-premise solution. And that was the product we built our technology on 25 years ago. And at the time, there was no internet in the same sense that there is today, and we weren't using it certain for these types of products. And so it was built to run independently from any outside connection. Now, there are lots of things you can do now with an internet connection, with laundry card, and we've certainly kept up to the times there. But it is important that when you consider what down means, there's a big difference between cloud-based solutions, and on-premise solutions. So, to go into a little more detail on that, a cloud-based solution is really expecting there to be that internet connectivity because its data, all of its data that it generally pulls and collects and sends to and synchronize with, are in a computer on the internet, not in the local store. So when you lose that connection, there is going to be potentially a problem there. We'll get into that. And then I guess on the contrast, on the on-premise side, everything is local. The data, all the networking is in the store. So there's very little that has to have an internet connection to operate. But so you can start off by kind of thinking about laundry card versus Flex RF and fast card is that there is some inherent differences in what happens when the internet goes down, or even we can talk more about Wi-Fi goes down as well in a bit. But let's talk a little bit about offline operations and exactly what happens with these systems when there is some type of, let's talk particularly about internet outages. So we have no internet. When that happens, what we'll find on an on-premise system is basically very little changes. The transactions on the kiosks and the machines continue to operate fine locally. Machines continue to start. People continue to add money to their cards, typically with cash only at this point, because most of pretty much all of the internet, all the credit card transactions are processed through an internet connection. So those may be offline, but your ability to start machines, add value to cards, dispense new cards is really very minimally impacted. So that is the case for on-premise. Now, with a cloud-based solution like FastCard or Flex, we have integrated some redundancies in there where it can run offline. So even though it does expect there to be that central database available, it does not have to be there in order for it to operate. So it is smart enough to know that when the internet is no longer available, that it will go into this offline mode, and it always keeps a current copy of what all the latest card balances are for the last many thousands of transactions or customers that have been in the store. So it can maintain a closed loop update to those records while that connection is offline. So again, even though it is cloud-based, you can still start machines, add value to cards, pretty much with cache, of course. All of those things can continue to happen, but all of that is being recorded locally, so you're not going to have any cloud-based functionality. So for example, if you're using the mobile app, that requires an internet connection. So during an outage like that, the mobile app will not operate. It does that product is going to require a connection directly to the store, and in that it will not function the way it's supposed to. So that would be one of the things that you really can't recover from, or I should say not that it can't recover from, but that is not going to operate during an internet outage. But outside of that, and credit cards being down, being offline, if I use the right terminology, there's very little that the retail customer experiences. If they have access to cash, they can use the kiosk, they can add value, all of those things. And there's some other offline capabilities, particularly with our fast card and flex RF systems, that allow you to make those offline times even more seamless to the retail customer. We have offline modes to take credit cards. So that would basically mean that during an outage, when there's no internet connectivity, you can continue to accept credit cards up to a limit that you set, so that what happens is when the internet reconnects, those transactions are then attempted to be processed. So it basically eliminates any frustration from the retail customer. Your machines continue to run, the customers continue to operate normally. They barely realize that anything is different. And then when we reconnect, we synchronize those transactions back to the central servers, and everything is good. There is a bit of risk involved in that, as you might imagine, since we are not verifying the credit card transactions. We are basically going to approve all of them and then assume that they're all going to be good transactions when we come back online. So there is potential that during an outage, an internet outage, that your credit card transactions that have been occurring could come back declined, and then you've already rendered the service. So there's an opportunity there. But it's important to realize that the retail customer has no idea that you're in an outage, so there's no reason to expect that they are going to do anything uniquely different during those outages to try to, quote unquote, maybe cheat the system in some way. It's just a way for you to continue to operate while you go and continue to look for what the problem may be, and your customers are impacted. And 99% of the customers, store owners that I talk to, they would much rather maybe have a risk of losing a cycle here and there during those rare occurrences than to have an issue where people just can't do their laundry, or what gets even more contentious is someone's got wet laundry and they can't dry because there's something going on there and they've got their credit card. So these offline modes are critical to allowing you to continue to run. It becomes seamless to your customer. And so, regardless, as far as CCI is concerned, if you're doing a laundry card or you're doing fast card or flex RF, offline capabilities are strong. You'll be able to continue to operate regardless of that status, with a few caveats on the fast card flex side. So you may have some issues with the mobile app working, but then that kind of leads me into the next layer of this, which is you can easily add network redundancy, or we like to call it cellular backup, to fast card and flex, so that instead of going into one of those offline modes, we just have a cellular modem that is just sitting in backup and waiting for a connection to drop on that primary port. And in those events, we pick up the cellular connection and the system continues to run completely normally. There is no disruption. The mobile app continues to work. You're basically just running on a backup internet connection. So these backup systems are affordable. They are easy to set up, and they're automatic. There's nothing that you need to do. It basically provides this secondary path to the internet when that primary one goes down, and they're smart enough to also fail back to the primary connection once that primary connection is established. There are alerts that can be configured be configured for you so that when your system does fail over to a backup, you can be notified that you are now running on your backup. There are certain data and time limits associated with some of these cellular devices, so you want to know that you're running on your backup so that you can, call your ISP or find out if there's something going on in the area that might have the internet down. But you get notified when they go offline. You get notified that you're on your cellular backup. You'll be notified when you come off of your cellular backup, and you'll also be notified when you're switching back to your primary internet service. So lots of information will be presented to you as you're going through these things. Again, we're talking about rare occurrences here, but when they happen, these are these are the things that can be configured to keep the store running seamlessly. And I think, when we're talking about coin customers that use these as maybe objections towards reliability, is to, not to forget that coins have reliability problems all too well. We should know coin jams, coin drops certainly become problematic. There's a vandalism aspect, particularly if you're unattended in a coin store with coin boxes being broken into, and all too often the damage done to those machines far exceeds what's actually in the machine in quarters. And so I've joked with store owners before that it might not be worth locking the machines, because for the $35 in quarters in a machine versus the 200 and maybe the $200 to $500 worth of damage done to break into the machine to get there, it'd be better off just to let them take the coins out of it and move on their merry way. Kidding, of course, but it is certainly the reality that the damage done far exceeds the value typically inside the kiosks or the machines for that matter. So, but coins are not without their problems, reliability issues. If you have a change machine that stops working, that effectively can really cause your store to have problems. People will have to go find change somewhere else. Depending on where you're located, that may not be easy. That may mean that they walk out the store and go somewhere else. If they have to leave the store to go get quarters, they're probably better off just going to another laundry. So keep in mind that coin is not absent from having its own reliability issues in the long run. We talked a little bit about visibility and alerts. Aside from the alerts that you can configure to get the system to let you know when something's going on, is you can always log into it and see what the current status is. There is reporting to give you a sense of every time the system or a location has come online versus offline, allow you to track down maybe some issues that might be happening with an internet provider. If it's happening occasionally and on a regular basis, you'll have all the information in those reports to be able to diagnose that further, whether it's with our team, with your internet provider, maybe with a piece of hardware that you're using in the store. But we have some great reporting that will allow you to have that visibility that's important for tracking that down. So I think to kind of talk about more specifically how to deal with owners that have this is, of course, we don't want to dismiss their concerns. It's more about just educating them on how these systems are designed. They're not designed in a manner that ignores the reality of life, that things do go offline and that things have to happen to recover from that. Make sure that you explain to them the different kinds of outages. Make sure they understand the difference between Wi-Fi, internet, power, and the various things that happen during those outages. Make sure you explain to them what our offline capabilities are, depending on if they turn on credit cards and offline credit card modes. Cellular backups are obviously the easiest thing you can do to keep things running smoothly and kind of invisibly when you're having issues. And at the same time, all of the visibility to your connection to the store are all presented to you when there's something going on at the location that you need to know about so you can do something about it. So, we've helped literally thousands of store owners set up these types of options, keep them reliable, and it's really not the technology that's the problem. It's really just understanding that the technology can do these things to recover from these real life events. So to kind of close things out today, when next time someone asks you what happens if the internet goes out, certainly keep calm. There's nothing to be panicked about. Keep in mind that the outages are generally nowadays, since so many businesses rely on these connections, are typically short. But with the offline modes built into these systems, we can reliably continue to run our business for extended periods of time. Depending on which type of product might bear into somewhat of how long it can run offline for. Laundry card's a little bit better at running longer offline than fast card or flex, but again, with cellular backup, that kind of doesn't become much of an issue anymore. So with that, that's what I have today. That's our offline capabilities, understanding the offline conversation, understanding what it means, and understanding how to talk to your customers about it. Thanks, and we'll see you and talk to you next time.